business advisor and supply chain expert, and welcome back to my podcast, The Morning Mood. Good morning, my Moodies. Alicia, that's what I've named my audience, the Moodies. And we are back with Alicia for our first episode of our monthly miniseries called The Inner Edge. And we will be talking about everything deep spiritual leadership, just everything that Alicia does, and she's going to share with us her sage advice on just living a whole peaceful life. Right, Alicia? Yeah. Yeah,
Yes,
that's the
I
intent.
hope so
So
anyway.
today, what do you want to talk to us about today, Alicia?
So I was thinking a little kind of riff off of the last one where we talked about less is more, but let's talk about how leadership is also
Yes.
about honing your focus. And so
Hmm.
less is more in a different way, but more like honing your focus and getting really clear and strategic about how you want to move forward in your business, which also
Yes, I think
applies
this
to
is
your
a
life,
great
of
one.
course.
As I mentioned when I started, Alicia and I are going to go really deep on topics. Some of these things like get glossed over, I think, in a lot of other media outlets. But Alicia has the ability to really kind of take us all the way down to the core. So that's what we're going to be doing. So let's talk about that. And that's you bring up a really good point. We talk about less is more in our personal lives, but how do you apply that to leadership and being a good leader?
I think one of the things that is happening right now, at least from what I'm seeing, is
Mhm.
there's a scarcity mentality because so many things are changing and people are afraid they're losing jobs, they're losing income. There's a lot of
Okay.
fear in the environment. Um, and the response to that is,
Yes.
let me spread a
Yes.
wide
That's
net,
our initial reaction all the time, right, Alicia? Is like we go
right?
into panic mode and we're like, "Okay, I'm gonna try to do everything that I can." And you're like, you're spread so thin. That is the initial knee reaction for almost everybody.
Right. And it is from like a
Yeah.
scarce like, oh, what if I don't? It's kind of like
Mhm.
FOMO in a different way. But like when you spread that wide net, it's almost like saying you dilute who you are, you dilute your offer, you dilute your vision, depending on if you're an entrepreneur or an executive, as opposed to it's a little counterintuitive, but like honing in on the essential traits, qualities, the essentials of the vision that you have for your business. Again, I say business and life, they're interchangeable. Um, and honing in on that. And instead of spreading your energy like throwing spaghetti against the wall and seeing what sticks, honing in on what is essential so that your energy is actually going to something that's going to serve you not only in the moment as you're getting you're getting through whatever challenges there are in terms of income or business, but it's going to serve you in the long run. And it's hard to think that way when people are in a scarcity mindset or there's so
Yeah.
much
So
fear in
one,
the
they're in a scarcity
discourse.
mindset. I think the other thing is that common feedback, right, from our peers and our colleagues is almost always like, go do more, right? Oh, it's not working. Do more. You haven't done enough yet. You haven't done enough yet. You haven't done enough yet. And that's where we get into this, this cycle of I have to do more, more, more because I don't feel good. I haven't succeeded yet. I haven't gotten that goal. And you and I have worked on this a lot on the focus
Yeah.
thing. And for me, because I'm all about visuals. I have to have a visual. For me, that what you were talking about in the visual that I started to work with was you can have a big broad light, right? And you can shine up a lot of stuff and you can light up a lot of stuff. But if you want to burn a hole in something, you got to concentrate that light.
That's right. And use the
Yeah.
magnifying glass to
Yeah.
concentrate on.
So where does
That's
it
right.
show up besides
Yeah.
people like they're in scarcity
I'm
mode, they're trying to do all this stuff. Where else do we see this show up?
Well, I want to say one thing about that that just occurred to me is just because so I want to make a
Yes.
distinction around the more piece. Doesn't mean that you don't develop programs or products that yeah, I'm not s you wanna develop programs and products, but that are honed
Yeah.
in on that essential vision, as opposed to trying to develop programs or products or services that are
Mhm.
outside of that essential vision. So instead of going
Mhm.
wide, I'm actually
Yeah.
suggesting you go deep. right? Which doesn't, I just don't want people to understand that you don't do anything, you stop doing everything or something like that. What it does is it should tap into your curiosity and your imagination about what is possible if you hone in on the essentials of
Yes.
what you
And
want to
that is a
create.
big shift in there too. You just said it, create, right? What do I want to create? And you're focused on what it is that you want to create versus, and I know you're going to talk to us more about this because you always do. It's that mind shift from what do I want to create for myself versus what do I have or what don't I have and I have to go get. And I think that it's small, but it's a big shift.
Right, and the shift, I call it between the creative and reactive. So when we move towards
Mhm.
something, and you were here on retreat when I actually did a somatic
I do.
exercise about that. Do you remember that? When I had you move, like, run towards something and then run away from something and the
Yes.
difference what it felt like in your body? So that's what I'm talking about. So we first we kind of go into like the lizard brain, the survival brain, and we create we do things that are as a reaction to avoid consequences.
Yes.
So that's like a reactive stance, as opposed to instead of saying I want to avoid this circumstance, what you change the language to say, what do I wanna generate? What do I wanna create? What do I wanna move towards something? So, I had a client once upon a time, and he was a marathon runner, um, and I was working with him, and he was getting ready to run a marathon, and, uh and at the same time, he was talking to me about a new contract that had just come in to his business. And the way he was talking about the contract with his staff was like, we can't afford to lose this. It's really important that we don't lose this,
Right. Not
right?
don't
That
lose
was
this
his
contract.
language, right? Don't lose this contract because, X, Y, and Z awful things will happen. And then I think we started talking about the marathon, and he said to me, I don't want to lose. I need to be, to make
Races
sure
and
that
all
my
that.
time is better because I don't want to lose. So he's having this conversation, and it's a stance that he's unaware of about I don't want to lose something. And so I asked him, what if he were to say to his staff, let's do everything we can do to win this. What do we need to do to win it? And I asked him that and to do something when he was running the marathon, he would say to me, when I can see the end in sight, the thought I have is, I can't lose. I can't lose. I can't lose. And I said, this time I want you to, when you see the end in sight, I want you to imagine yourself already
Mhm.
past the end and say to yourself, my time is amazing. I did a great time. And so a couple of weeks after he ran the marathon, he said to me, I did exactly what you said. He says, "Do you know that that was the best time I had done in like the last couple of years?" And he says, and my
Mhm.
body didn't feel so beat up at the end. And so then we went to like the contract, and I said, "Then what happened with your team?" He said, "We landed the contract, but not only that, we created some new approaches that we wouldn't have created if I was still
Mhm.
focused on not losing the contract." So that's what I'm talking about. That's the difference between the reaction that you have, and it's hard because, there is so much fear in the environment right now and so many
Yeah.
different levels around the world. Um, and the creative stance, which is,
Yeah.
what is it that I
And
want to move
focus that
toward?
you wanna move towards, right? So I think a lot of times we start this journey, right,
Right.
towards and this is a journey, like, I'm not gonna lie about it. You and I have been working together for over 20 years. And so it is a journey. So you kinda start out on your journey like, what do I wanna move forward towards, right? And it can be broad, but you need to continue to narrow that down to find and when you and I have worked together and when I've had success with this, it has always been for me what makes me feel light. If I'm doing something that makes me feel heavy, or
Yeah.
if I'm like, "Ugh," like, every time I get on a call with a client or a project or whatever it is, I know it's not the right work for me. Like, it's just and I think you and I have talked about that too, is when I focus on the work that matters to me is when I have the most joy. And the most success, you're
and
right.
the most
Yeah, I've had a
success.
lot of unsuccessful projects. I'm not gonna lie about it. Uh,
Yeah. But, there's another distinction I wanna make. Just so when I say hone, it doesn't necessarily mean
agreed.
don't pivot. So that yeah,
Yes.
so that's different because when there are times where we all want to pivot, we have it, but it has to
Yes.
be intentionally pivoting, intentionally saying, I'm going to take a new direction
Yes.
because the environment has changed, or I changed,
Yes.
or my clients have changed.
Yes.
That's an intentional pivot. And I'm saying so that's different than saying, don't do something different. That pivot is intentional, but it still carries the same creative stance. It's like, okay, if I'm going to pivot, how do I
Yes.
want to hold this new vision? What do I want to do in that pivot that's new
Yes.
and creative? Because I want to address a new kind of client or new kind of environment. So I just want to make a distinction. It doesn't mean don't pivot. It just means it's intention and it's strategic and it's still focused
Yes.
on what's
So when I
essential in
talk
your
about this
vision.
with my corporate clients, I talk about it as the North Star. You define your North Star. This is where we're headed. This is our goal. It could be 10 years out. It could be 20 years out. It could be 6 months out, whatever it is. And you may tack as you're headed towards that North Star as you're exploring the ocean. You may get off trail a little bit, but you're still headed in that direction. You're still making progress towards the North Star, maybe slower, maybe faster, but you don't lose sight of that North Star. That's how I explain it to people.
Yeah, I think that's right. And another way of looking at it is, and it's grounded in actually a spiritual practice, is, the way you look at failure. If you try to do certain things, and it's a combination of if you keep doing the same thing over and over
Right.
and expecting a different result, you know, there's that. But there's also looking at those dead ends, those what you might term as
Yes.
failures, as actually data that you're going in the wrong direction. It's not really failure. It's really data that you're getting information from the environment saying,
Yes.
this is not the way you need to go. You need to take
Yeah.
another, like what you call it, tack. You need
Yeah.
to steer differently. So I'm going to also say that because I think a lot of times when we're in that kind of depleted mindset or scarcity mindset, we think we're failing, we're failing, we're failing. No, you're gathering data and you're trying to chart the course so that you
Yes.
do end up
And
where you'd like to
you're
go.
taking that data to narrow your focus, right? You're saying, that didn't fit, that didn't feel right. I didn't have the qualifications, whatever it
Right.
was, that didn't interest me. I didn't feel light when I talked about that. Whatever it is that you're doing to qualify it, take that data as for you to hone your focus, right? Is there a skill set that I need to learn if this particular thing I really do want to pursue?
Right.
And I do. And I want us to talk about, we'll get to it in a minute, the things that you can do to help hone your focus. But like you, I want to reiterate, honing your focus and doing less is not sitting on the couch watching TV and complaining, right? Because
Absolutely.
I do not want somebody coming back to me and saying, "Well, hey, I listened to your podcast and I did less." And let me tell you something, it didn't work out. What we're talking about is focusing your energy and your efforts on things that matter to you, because the end, what comes out
Right.
of this will be a much better quality product, quality life, more spiritual health, all of these things that you and I talk about. I focus a lot on what happens in corporate. I see this in corporate a lot as well, where when a company starts to fail, they try to be everything to everybody, right? All of a sudden, we're high fashion, we're low fashion, we're fashion in between. We're doing this, we're doing that. Oh, we were kids, now we're this. We only sold, whatever it is, and they start panicking. They try to sell everything to or whatever. They completely lose it. And so I also see this in product development. A product fails, tech product fails. They build more, building on top, on top, on top, on top, creating more tech debt instead of sitting back and saying, let's just take a knee for a second. What isn't working? What is working?
Mhm.
What can we do?
Right. And so
Yeah.
that goes to your question about how do you hone your
Yeah.
vision?
There you
And
go.
you
Talk
just said
about the
it, you
pause. The
pause.
pause is important.
Yeah. The pause is important. It's like you're going, you're going, you're going, you're going. And it's like if you've ever been on a high speed train, all you see is a blur. that you're going by. It's like slow the train a
See
little so
what's
that you
going
can actually
on.
take in the scenery. Uh, right. And so really, and bring in
Mhm.
diverse voices. That's the other thing. So in that pause, in that kind of reassessment and recalibration, you should be bringing in people that see things that you don't see. Even if you
Yes.
don't like what they say, it's still, that oftentimes we don't do that because we don't want to hear
Yeah.
something that contradicts our worldview. But you really need it. You need people who have diverse perspectives because they're looking at things
Mhm.
that you just can't see. So the pause is really important. And again, when you're in that mindset, you think that maybe, oh my God, I need to do more. I need to do faster. It's again, maybe somewhat counterintuitive, but it is taking some time, very intentional, even, going away on a mini retreat or just really immersing yourself in that pause in a way that isn't completely
Yeah.
mental or intellectual, right? Getting your body in a certain way. Like when we used to do retreats in Annapolis,
Yeah.
I used to take my teams kayaking. And so much shows up on the water that is it's showing up in work, but it's just showing up in the water so clearly because
Yeah.
you're in
You're
a
fighting
completely different
water.
environment. So you pause. Right. Pause, diverse perspectives, and step into a new environment to do the work. Don't do it in your office because your office just reinforces what you always do. Go somewhere that is neutral, preferably access to nature, and have a different conversation than just the intellectual report kind of
Yeah.
conversations that you have at
You
work.
can't
So
heal in
change
the
it up a
environment that made you sick. Like, that's something I read, and I think there's some validity in that, just changing your perspective. And I want to for so a lot of my audience are young leaders coming up in the world, and I know you ain't got no money, so it's all right. But look, you can just go to a park. We're not talking about you don't need to go
right.
if you want to go to a Portugal for a retreat with Alicia, I highly recommend it, but we also understand that that may be out of the financial reaches of some people. But so for you young people out there who are trying to, or just people who want to try this out, it doesn't have to be complicated. You don't need vision boards. You
No.
don't need to go like sign up for a whole bunch of classes. Go sit in nature, have an honest conversation with yourself, and start to notice. For when you and I worked, a lot of work we did on was noticing the body and where we felt stuff, right? And after 20
Right.
years, I can almost peg when something's coming, right? I can like, oh, there's the twitch. She's gonna lose it.
Right.
uh, and so, but there is that portion of it, like you can do this. You don't have to invest a lot of money in it. You can go to a park if you live in a big city. You can go for a hike. Just get outside, change your perspective, and really focus on what you feel, what feels good, and try to narrow your focus around that. But do something. I think that's the other thing we need to leave people with, right?
Right. Right. And so, but this is like the precursor to do it. We have a default to like action, action,
There we go.
action,
Yeah.
especially in the United
Go
States.
for it.
It's
Yep.
like check, check, act, go, go, go. And, and so I'm not saying don't take action. I'm
Yes.
saying take right action. And to take right action, you need the pause before you make the decision to do it, because then you're actually really clear on what you're doing, why you're doing, and you're
Yeah.
focused on the
And
result that you want to
I
get.
intentionally do the pause. I have to do the pause sometimes, because I will be honest with you, 85% of my reaction to something initially is a negative reaction. Almost 85% of my time, I'm like, "What?" And then I'm like, "Well, hold on a second. Calm down. What isn't
Right.
really
Yeah.
asking for
And
anything.
sometimes
You're
it's
just in a
not
bad
do I
mood or
do that?
whatever. Your default reaction becomes that."
Yeah, and it's sometimes it's not do I do this or don't I
Yeah.
do this? It's not a yes or a no. In that pause, you say,
Yeah.
okay, if I were to do this, so it's a different conversation. We tend
Yes.
to polarize things and either it's a yes or a
Yeah.
no. It's a right or a wrong. And what I'm saying is that doesn't necessarily serve us. It's like the question isn't do I do it, but
Yeah.
what needs to be done
Yes.
or how does it need to change? They're different questions, and we tend to ask the obvious scarcity questions that show up first. The other questions, the deeper questions, show up when you are in the pause and away from your environment and listening to diverse perspectives that bring up new and
Better.
different
Almost
and
always
better
better. I will be honest with
questions.
you, every time I have ever paused and said, "Let's just wait a second, collect data, let me collect my thoughts, let me just sleep on it, like, my tummy feels weird when I talk about this, like, let me find out what that's about." Like, whatever it is, every time I've ever said, "Hold on a second," before I make my final decision, I've always come up with a better answer, and almost always I've come up with
Right.
a solution that was probably better than what we were talking about. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But again,
Exactly.
there's all kinds of clues that your body sends you. Hopefully, you and I can talk about that, get deep on that another episode about the body signals, the raising the shoulders, the tummy upsets,
Yeah.
the cramp in your toe, your eye twitch. Mine is I get a twitch in my right eye, and I know that's when it has completely gone off the rails.
Or we stop breathing. That's the other one. It's
And
really
how
off.
many sessions have you
People
and I
don't
been in? And
breathe.
like 15 minutes in, you're like, I haven't heard you breathe yet. I'm like,
I know.
well, there it
I
is.
know. I'm not saying break.
All right, Alicia, thank you very much for this great conversation about how to focus yourself, do less to become more powerful, is really what we're trying to tell you.
Right.
Excellent. All right,
Right.
well, we will
Right.
be back again
Absolutely.
next month for another deep conversation on the inner edge. We hope to see you there. Thanks, Alicia.